June 26, 1944. The hedgerows of Normandy were still heavy with smoke. Dawn broke in slow, colorless light over a field littered with twisted steel and scorched earth. The smell of diesel and burned cordite hung in the air, carried by a faint wind that whispered through the ruined wheat. German tank officers stood beside the hulking remains of a Sherman, its armor torn open by an 88mm shell. To them, it was familiar. Another easy kill, another symbol of Allied overconfidence. For months they had mocked the American tank, its thin armor, its smaller gun, its tall silhouette that made it a perfect target. The Tiger and Panther ruled these fields, and German crews believed no Allied machine could challenge them. But that morning, beyond the mist, something moved. The faint clank of treads, slower, heavier, deliberate. A new Sherman rolled from the smoke, its barrel longer, its engine deeper, its crew silent. When it fired, the sound was different. Sharper, angrier, final. A brass shell casing hit the ground with a metallic ring. The laughter stopped. In the early years of the Second World War, the German Panzer divisions had rewritten the very language of warfare. From the sweeping fields of Poland to the open plains of France, they moved like steel storms, coordinated, fast, and merciless. By 1941, their armored spearheads, led by the Panzer III and IV, had become the model for every mechanized army on Earth. Then came the Tigers and Panthers, monstrous machines that combined power, precision, and terror. Their guns could pierce Allied armor long before a return shot was even possible. When American forces entered the European theater, their primary battle tank, the M4 Sherman, was designed not for dueling but for mobility, logistics, and production scale. It could be built fast, and in thousands. Yet on the battlefields of Tunisia, Italy, and later Normandy, its limitations became clear. Its 75mm gun struggled against the thick armor of the Tiger. Its thin plating often ignited when hit. Crews nicknamed it the Ronson, after the lighter. It lit up every time. Still, the Americans had something Germany did not: an industrial base that could adapt, re-engineer, and mass-produce solutions faster than any army in history. The laughter of German tankers echoed across Europe, but it reached Detroit, too. And it was heard by engineers who had no intention of staying behind. The shell casing that fell in Normandy would begin its story here, on the assembly lines of an America that refused to lose to arrogance. In 1943, deep inside the humming factories of Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, the transformation began. The United States had already earned the name Arsenal of Democracy, but now it aimed to turn ridicule into retribution. Engineers at Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors worked through nights of blinding sparks and furnace heat, redesigning the Sherman's core. They lengthened its barrel, improved its recoil system, and rebalanced its turret to accommodate the new 76mm Tri-1 gun, a weapon capable of piercing the armor of the German Panther at combat range. Across the Atlantic, British ordnance experts took the same base tank and fitted it with the formidable 17-pounder gun, creating the Sherman Firefly, a weapon that could destroy a Tiger with a single well-placed shot. Suddenly, the Allies' inferior tank had teeth. By the time Allied forces prepared for Operation Overlord, the new Shermans were arriving by the hundreds. They looked the same rounded hull, the same broad tracks. But inside they were different. Faster traverse, stronger ammunition, a sharper bite. To the German eye, they seemed unchanged, still mock-worthy silhouettes on the horizon. But the U.S. Army had learned the lesson of adaptation. Where Germany engineered perfection in small numbers, America built power in endless succession. Each Sherman that rolled off the line carried not just steel and fire, but a philosophy that innovation, multiplied by will, could turn the tide of war. In the months to come, that philosophy would meet the enemy head-on, in the hedgerows of France, where laughter would turn to silence and American industry would speak through steel. The new Sherman was more than a machine. It was the physical expression of adaptation under pressure. American engineers had taken the criticism personally, reworking every vulnerable detail through field reports from Tunisia and Anzio. The 76mm gun was their answer. Longer, sleeker, firing high-velocity rounds that could finally shatter German armor. It didn't make the Sherman invincible, but it gave the crew a fighting chance. Something priceless on the front lines. Tank crews noticed the difference instantly. The new gun's crack was sharper, its recoil more violent, its effect more decisive. In the chaos of hedgerow fighting, where engagements happened at ranges of 500 meters or less, speed and reaction time meant survival. American crews learned to move fast, never stay still, never duel head-on. They struck from the flanks, using coordination and mobility, where the enemy relied on brute strength. What the Tiger had in armor, the Sherman gained in numbers. Dozens rolled together, their commanders communicating through reliable radios, moving like a single rolling organism. In contrast, German tanks, though deadly, suffered from mechanical fragility and fuel shortages. Every broken track or empty tank meant another immovable monument to lost momentum. For the Americans, victory wasn't measured in single shots, but in sustained pressure, a rhythm of production and perseverance. Each tank knocked out could be replaced, each improvement tested in the field and refined in real time. The German army was fighting men. The United States was fighting with an idea, that industry itself could become a weapon. And in that idea lay the foundation of a revolution that the enemy was only beginning to understand. For the Germans, the realization came slowly, and then all at once. Reports from the Western Front began describing Shermans with uncanny precision and unexpected lethality. Panther commanders wrote of enemy tanks striking from unseen angles, firing faster, retreating before counterfire could land. The 75th shell, once dismissed as inadequate, now punched clean through the side armor of their prized machines. In captured field journals, officers described the shock. "They are everywhere," one wrote. "The Americans do not fight as before. They swarm, they flank, they move before we can aim." What had seemed like inferior design had become strategic advantage. The Sherman's simplicity allowed crews to repair them in the field, sometimes within hours. German armor, though formidable, was too complex. Every repair required skilled mechanics and spare parts that the collapsing Reich could no longer supply. Behind those frontline miracles stood the unrelenting pulse of American production. While German factories fell silent under Allied bombing, Detroit's assembly lines thundered day and night. Over 49,000 Shermans rolled out before war's end, each one an improvement over the last. The battlefield had changed from a contest of machines to a contest of philosophies. Germany built perfection, America built persistence. And persistence, multiplied by industry, began to rewrite the balance of power. In that industrial rhythm, the clang of steel, the hiss of oil, the fall of each empty shell casing, the sound of a new kind of warfare was being born. By late July 1944, the calm fields of Normandy had become graveyards of iron. The German lines, stretched thin after weeks of bombardment, still relied on their armored giants, the Tigers and Panthers, to stem the Allied tide. South of Caen, near the small villages of Saint-Aignan and Villers-Bocage, German tank crews waited behind hedgerows, confident that another wave of Shermans would burn before reaching their sights. But this time, the American advance moved differently. Instead of charging, they spread wide, forming staggered lines and calling in precise artillery. In the distance, the new M4A176Ws, the upgraded Shermans, rolled forward with quiet confidence. Their longer barrels gleamed dull gray under the clouds, aimed not in desperation, but with purpose. When the first Panther emerged to counterattack, its turret turned, too slow. An American gunner, crouched inside the new Sherman, adjusted elevation, steady breath, single squeeze. The 76mm round tore through the hedgerow and struck the Panther's flank. The explosion rolled through the trees, followed by a low metallic ping, a spent casing hitting the turret floor. Other Shermans joined in, coordinated by radio, flanking the Germans in a practiced rhythm. Smoke thickened, engines roared, and the battlefield's sound changed. no longer the helpless rattle of overmatched tanks, but the confident cadence of a weapon finally equal to its enemy. For the first time in the war, the laughter that once filled German camps had turned into silence, laced with disbelief. The turning point arrived in a moment both sudden and symbolic. As Allied armor pushed through the bocage toward the Falaise pocket, the German Panzer units, once so disciplined and sure, began to fracture. Communications failed, fuel ran dry, and the skies above belonged to Allied fighter bombers. On the ground, American Shermans pressed forward, their 76mm guns roaring in unison. Every shell that struck a Panther or Tiger was more than a tactical success. It was the sound of an industrial nation proving its design philosophy right. German tank commanders, men who had once mocked the cattle of American industry, found themselves surrounded by the very thing they had underestimated: quantity refined into quality. Allied intelligence later recovered diaries from Panzer crews describing their disbelief. The Shermans have changed. They are faster, their fire more deadly. They strike before we can move. The battlefield that had once favored precision and power now belonged to those who could sustain the fight. Every destroyed Sherman was quickly replaced. Every fallen crew avenged by 3 more tanks rolling from the ports of Cherbourg and Omaha. The American advance no longer stalled before German armor. It flowed around it, overwhelmed it, and crushed it beneath sheer momentum. By late August, the myth of German invincibility lay shattered among the wrecks of their greatest tanks. Amid the smoke, the sound returned, a single shell casing striking the hull, ringing like a bell across the empty fields, a small, golden symbol of a changing world. When the dust settled over Normandy, the scale of what had happened became undeniable. The once feared German Panzer Corps was in retreat, not because its tanks had suddenly weakened, but because its enemy had evolved faster than it could react. Reports from captured German officers revealed an uncomfortable truth. They were no longer facing the same American army that had landed in North Africa. This was an army sharpened by failure, empowered by industry, and driven by an unshakable belief in adaptation. In the months following the breakout from Normandy, the upgraded Shermans, both the American 76mm and the British Firefly, became the backbone of Allied armored thrusts through France and into Belgium. The Firefly in particular earned a legendary reputation. Its 17-pounder gun claimed some of the most feared German tanks in the war. Even Tiger crews began to whisper of the long-barreled Shermans that could now kill them from a distance once thought safe. Production statistics told the same story. For every Tiger that left a German factory, America produced nearly 100 Shermans. Each was a statement that the war would not be won by perfection, but by persistence. The strength of democracy was not in flawless machines, but in countless hands working together to build something greater than fear. In the smoldering fields of France, where the echo of gunfire slowly faded, a single truth emerged. The Sherman had become what its creators intended: a weapon of relentless progress. By early 1945, the tide of armor warfare had permanently turned. The same American tank that had once been mocked in dispatches now led columns across the Rhine. From Bastogne to Remagen, Sherman surged forward like an industrial tide, a moving testament to what coordinated engineering and logistics could achieve. German defenses, fragmented and desperate, could no longer rely on their few surviving Tigers or Panthers. Each engagement bled them of machines they could never replace. Captured German records showed the psychological impact was as devastating as the material one. Tank commanders wrote of exhaustion, of endless waves of American armor, of the futility of tactical skill against endless supply. One officer's post-war report summarized it simply: "They built faster than we could destroy." In contrast, American morale soared. Tank crews, once fearful of facing German giants, now spoke with quiet confidence. Many remembered the first time their 76mm gun penetrated a Tiger's armor. Not as vengeance, but as vindication. Their faith in their engineers, in their country's ability to adapt, had been restored. By the war's end, over 49,000 Shermans had served across every front, From Normandy's fields to the ruins of Berlin, each bore the mark of a democratic machine at its best. Not perfect, not glamorous, but unyielding. And as peace returned, the spent brass casings that once littered the fields of Europe became relics. Small, silent symbols of a nation that turned laughter into innovation and mockery into mastery. When the guns finally fell silent in May 1945, Europe was a continent of ruins and echoes. Yet among the debris of war, one image endured. The humble Sherman tank resting under a pale sky, its engine cold, its armor scarred, its barrel pointed toward a horizon it had helped reclaim. Around it lay the spent brass casings, glinting faintly in the morning light. They were more than remnants of battle. They were the sound of a nation's transformation, each ring marking a moment when innovation answered arrogance. What began as a weapon of compromise had become a symbol of collective will. The Sherman was never the most powerful tank on paper, but it embodied something far greater than specifications. It represented adaptability, the quiet genius of engineers who refused to accept defeat, and the spirit of ordinary soldiers who trusted that progress could outlast perfection. In the eyes of the men who fought within it, the Sherman came to define democracy itself. Imperfect, resilient, always improving. Its victories were not forged in isolation but in unity. Mechanics, welders, designers, and soldiers linked through purpose. And so, as history turns its pages, the metallic echo of that falling shell casing still rings, not as a sound of destruction, but as a hymn to perseverance. For in every war, the true weapon of freedom is not firepower alone, but the unyielding human belief that even laughter, when met with courage and creation, can be turned into victory.